just
The
didn't
first
know
red
cherry
flag
blossoms
was
in
the
here were
welcome
so hard.
basket. I had just bought
It
3
must be so
acres of wooded
nice.
land at the
The
edge of a
only
sleepy
nice thing
town in North
about
Carolina,
Grays, by the way.
planning to build my
Oh my god,
retirement
mental.
cabin in
Today I saw
peace.
so many like
No neighbors in sight, no traffic, just trees and
stallions.
quiet.
What are those in English?
So when a woman in a
Very
pastel cardigan
fast
strutted up my
military
gravel driveway
airplanes.
carrying a basket
Like
of
a bunch
muffins
of
and a
them. They were like
clipboard,
lined up
I knew
and they
something
were
was off.
so loud.
"Hi there. I'm Trisha," she chirped,
Jet
with that
fighters. Yeah, yeah, I
tight-lipped
saw a lot of
grin
jet
only
fighters in
middle-aged
Seoul today.
HOA board members
I
seem to
don't know
perfect.
why, but
I'm the president of the Maple
they're kind of
Hollow
annoying. They're
Homeowners
really loud.
Association. I eyed her warily and leaned against the tailgate of my truck. "That's so?
I was just like,
I didn't
oh
know there
shit,
was
we're
an
gonna
HOA
get
here."
bumped.
"There
And I
wasn't,"
was like,
she
if
said, pushing the basket into my hands.
Could be.
But last
I
year we
couldn't
voted to
exactly
expand
see
the Maple
number.
Hollow
They were kind of
boundaries.
far up in the sky.
"Your new property falls under our jurisdiction now. You'll need to
Oh, I
sign
don't know.
these and
I
pay
was
the
just like,
initial
maybe
fee."
there was like a
She slapped a
event or
thick packet of
something, 'cause, like, there
papers
were a
onto the
lot of them.
tailgate. I didn't even bother flipping through them. "I don't think so," I said. "My deed says nothing about an HOA." Trisha's smile faltered. "Well, we're a governing body now, and we filed the expansion with the county.
They were trying to get that
You're
along.
in, whether you
Thank
like it or
God.
not."
Thank you.
I almost
Thank you
laughed.
for your
Almost.
service.
"Lady, I didn't buy into a neighborhood, I bought land. There's one road in and out and no one plows it but me. So unless your HOA plans to pave my driveway and build my house, you can keep your muffins." Trisha's face darkened, and her eyes narrowed behind those oversized sunglasses. "Refusing to join is a violation," she said. "We'll start fining you if you don't comply."
I mean, I don't know if it was.
I stared at her like she just threatened to fine a bear for living in the woods. "You do that," I said, "and I'll let my lawyer know." She gave a little huff and turned on her heel, stomping back to her Lexus that was parked half in the ditch. I watched her peel out, flinging gravel with her tires. I thought that would be the end of it. Spoiler, it wasn't. 2 days later, I got a letter taped to my mailbox post. Not mailed, taped. It had the HOA's letterhead and some ridiculous claim that I owed them $500 in fines for non-compliance and unauthorized exterior conditions. I hadn't even built the house yet. I called up my buddy, my lawyer Mark. He sounded amused when I told him what was going on. "They're trying to retroactively force you into a contract you never signed," he said. "That's not how HOAs work, Shane. Can I nail them for this?" I asked. "Oh, we're going to do better than that," Mark said. "We're gonna make their little fake kingdom crumble." So while I started clearing brush for my driveway, Mark started clearing legal brush, digging into what Trisha and her HOA crew had been doing. It didn't take long before he called me back, tone sharper this time. "They never filed correctly with the county," he said, "and they forged half the signatures on the expansion vote. Shane, this isn't just a scam, it's fraud." I looked out at the forest and shook my head. "Good," I said. "Let's burn it down." Not literally, but the paper trail. That was going up in flames. HOA story, HOA stories, Homeowners Association stories. The next move came at dawn 3 days later. I was sipping coffee on the tailgate of my truck, boots muddy from digging post holes for the new gate I was installing out front. My dog, Jasper, lifted his head and let out a low growl just before I saw the pair of reflective vests weaving through the trees. 2 men, both in their 50s, marched toward the edge of my clearing. One carried a clipboard, the other held a measuring wheel.
This is natural.
They didn't look up until they were 30 feet from me. "You're trespassing," I said, loud enough to carry over the hum of crickets and the distant drone of chainsaws from a logging crew a few miles off. Clipboard guy didn't blink.
Look at that.
"We're conducting an HOA inspection." I raised my
Makes a
cup.
big difference, right?
"On private land."
But to be honest,
He frowned
I
like
think
I'd just
this
insulted his
color
mother.
looks better on
"This
me than
property
this
is under
color
Maple
does.
Hollow
Like,
jurisdiction. We have the right to
you
ensure
know?
compliance with
I think
exterior
that looks
standards.
better than that. So I feel like I need to
Jasper
dye.
stood and padded toward them. He's half shepherd, half stubborn mule and all muscle. The guy with the wheel dropped it. "I already told your president to take a hike," I said. "You want to keep your kneecaps, I suggest you do the same." They backed off without another word. One of them muttered something under his breath about non-compliant structures as they disappeared into the woods. I called Mark as soon as they were out of sight. "They are escalating," I said.
whatever.
Now they're sending people onto my property.
Like the difference is not that
I'm
big.
already drafting a cease and desist,
those are just like every now and then
he said.
just yeeted a color.
But it gets worse. I found something. I could hear the rustle of paper on his end of the line. They filed a supplementary charter last month claiming they were granted enforcement authority by the county zoning board. The document signed by a Gavin R.
More in their churches. Like it's
Ellington, supposedly a zoning administrator. Is he real? He was, Mark said.
It's not
he retired
like
4 years
very
ago.
big
I called him this morning.
Like, example,
he never
in the Netherlands,
authorized any expansion, and he sure as hell didn't sign anything last month.
But in Korea, that's
I exhaled slowly, my coffee forgotten.
Easter, because
so they forged a government document.
Unless you go to church.
Yeah, Mark said. Which means we're not just dealing with civil overreach. This is criminal fraud.
So
2 hours later, I had a county officer parked in my driveway and a file folder waiting in his passenger seat. Officer Braddock was young, polite, and all business. He took one look at the forged document and made a sharp sound through his teeth. This isn't just fake, he said. It's sloppy. They even used the wrong county seal. While he radioed his supervisor, I handed over the footage from my trail cam's clear shots of the 2 trespassers, time-stamped. He nodded, already reaching for his notepad. We'll open a case, he said, but don't confront them. Let us handle it. I won't, I said, but I'm not taking down my gate either, he grinned.
No matter.
You'd be a fool if you did.
Green hair, like
by the weekend, Mark had filed a formal complaint with the county clerk, and Braddock's department had issued subpoenas for Maple Hollow's board members, Tricia included. But the real twist came when one of the HOA board members, an older guy named Don Leary, showed up on my land late Sunday afternoon, sheepishly holding a folded envelope.
I just don't want to like shove the camera.
I didn't know it had gone this far, he said, eyes
Sorry,
darting around like he expected someone to jump out of the woods.
My name is Stella.
I thought we were just trying to protect property values. I opened the envelope. Inside was a typed letter, unsigned, threatening Don with removal from the board if he didn't support the expansion vote. Attached was a list of names residents who'd apparently voted yes. Some were dead. A few had moved away years ago. You kept this? I asked. He nodded. Figured I'd need it someday. Looks like someday's here. I handed him a pen from my truck's dash and watched him sign a statement at the bottom of the letter, confirming its authenticity. Mark was practically giddy when I delivered the documents to his office the next morning. This is gold, he said. Coercion, fraud, impersonation of a county official, trespassing, it's a buffet of bad decisions. He passed the papers to a clerk, then leaned back in his chair. They're going to implode, he said, and we're going to make sure they do it in front of the entire community. By midweek, the county's zoning board had issued a formal statement declaring the Maple Hollow expansion null and void. Local news picked it up within hours. The headline, Homeowner exposes HOA fraud with forged county documents. Tricia tried to spin it, of course. She held a meeting in the Maple Hollow Community Center and pleaded ignorance, claiming the board had been misled by a third-party consultant. Problem was, that consultant didn't exist.
No, it's okay. No, I don't really care.
And her signature was on every document. The real kicker came when 2 sheriff's deputies showed up at her house with a warrant. Jasper and I watched from the hill, overlooking her cul-de-sac as they walked her out in handcuffs. By the time the sun dipped behind the pine trees, the rest of the board had resigned. Don called me that night, voice quiet. They're talking about dissolving the HOA completely, he said. Good, I told him. Start over, with real votes this time. He didn't argue. Mark filed a civil suit the next morning, not just to formally dissolve the HOA's bogus claim to my land, but to force them to cover legal fees and damages. They settled within 2 weeks. I used the money to finish the gate and install motion sensors along the tree line. No one's tried trespassing since. The land's quiet again. Jasper naps on the porch most afternoons, and I spend my days chopping wood, laying out plans for the cabin, and pretending I don't keep a copy of the forged charter pinned to my workshop wall. Not as a warning, as a trophy. The morning after the settlement was finalized, I got a knock on the door just as I was finishing up the footing layout for the cabin foundation. Jasper was already on alert, before I got within 10 feet of the door. When I opened it, there was a man in a dark gray windbreaker, badge clipped to his belt and a folder tucked under his arm.
I normally get
Shane
stared at a
McCall,
lot
he
anyways,
asked, glancing down at a thin
regardless of,
notepad.
streaming, so I guess
Who's
I
asking?
kind of got used
Detective
to staring,
Alan
so for me, like,
Cormer,
it's not
White
necessarily
Pine
more when I'm
County
streaming,
Sheriff's
so
Office.
it's like they're looking
Got a few
anyways, I might
questions
as
about
well
the HOA board you
stream
helped
as
bring
well,
down.
so.
I stepped aside and gestured him in.
Yeah, it's like the gimbal.
Jasper
and, like,
gave
it's
a
just, like, my
low,
phone,
quiet
and I have,
huff
like,
but
the
stayed put.
microphone hooked up.
Cormer didn't waste time.
Yeah, it's nice, right? It's so good.
He opened the folder and slid a few photos
Yeah,
onto
same.
the
I got
edge
it
of
for
my
super cheap, and
workbench
it's, like,
blurry
a save,
surveillance
like, it's
shots,
so nice.
most showing
Like, it's,
Tricia stepping
like,
out
it
of her
really, like,
Lexus in
helps
front
with
of the
the-
county records office.
Yeah,
The
yeah.
timestamps were from
Yeah,
6
definitely.
weeks
Wanna-
prior.
I guess it's kind of heavy.
She entered the building at
Just to try it out.
4:42 p.m., he
It's like
said.
heavy, but it's not that bad.
The office closes at
Not that
4:30.
bad. And it
No
makes
one
it
was
look
supposed to be
smoother because, like,
inside, but we reviewed the logs. He flipped another page. This one showed a man in a navy polo
It's too
swiping a key
complicated.
card.
It's like, yeah, just-
Name's
you know,
Curtis
honestly,
Hall.
business cards,
He's a
it's
junior
like-
clerk in the zoning
Hand
department.
them out, you know?
Worked there just under a year. He let her in
What
through
do
the
you do?
side
You do
door,
vlogs,
claimed
or-
she was there to correct a filing error.
Oh, that's,
I leaned against the
hard.
counter and crossed my arms. That how the fake expansion
sounds
documents
nice,
ended
though.
up in the county system? That's our working theory, Cormer said.
Does she
Except
accept
now
it?
Curtis won't answer questions without a lawyer, and
that's, like,
Tricia's
the
keeping
perfect time. I
quiet.
was thinking, like, April
I
is,
tilted
like, the
my head.
nicest. April, May is
So
the
what do
best
you
time.
need from me? He pulled out a signed affidavit. You mentioned in your complaint that your lawyer confirmed the county
these are
never
gonna be gone in a
authorized
week.
the expansion.
Yeah.
I need you to testify to
actually,
that
end of
under oath and
April, there
confirm
are
this
a lot of,
document is
they're, like,
accurate.
a lot of
We're
other
assembling a
flowers.
criminal case
So they're,
fraud,
like-
abuse of
I don't think
public
I have them
office,
here,
possibly
but they're, like,
conspiracy.
these super
I
bright,
scanned the paper.
like, flowers
Everything
in these
checked out.
bushes. They're,
I
like,
signed it.
azaleas. And
Before
if
he
you go to,
left,
like,
Cormer
Golden
paused at the edge of the
University and
porch.
stuff, they have like a whole like.
We're running a
mountain
deeper
size
audit of
Golden
Maple
Gate.
Hollow's
It's, like, near-
financials,
actually,
he
if you just go
said.
to Namsan Mountain,
There's a chance this thing's
her,
bigger than just
then
your
you see,
land.
like,
I
all these,
nodded
like,
once.
super brightly
Let me
colored
know what you
flowers.
find.
I really like.
He
them,
gave a
so I
short
actually
nod
sometimes
and
prefer
disappeared
them
down the
over
drive,
pages.
tires
Like,
crunching on
neon
gravel.
green.
That evening, I called Mark.
Just the Namsan.
He already
like,
knew.
Namsan Mountain.
They're calling it
There's, like, you,
Operation
like, go,
Hollow
like, walk
Crown,
the
he said.
path there, you
The
can see
county's
them a lot.
dragging
So
in
when she
every
visits,
board
she should
member,
be able to
every
see those.
contractor they paid, every permit they filed.
Yeah.
Turns out Tricia and her crew
Yeah,
weren't just
that's
playing
actually
expansion
cool.
games. They were funneling HOA dues through
I
shell
would never
maintenance
do that. I'm, like,
companies
too
and
shy for
pocketing
that.
the
I'm kinda
difference.
jealous of you for that.
How much? Preliminary estimates
Oh,
over
that's- I always say that, and
200,000.
then I just like I never.
And it
do
looks like they tried to bury a failed landscaping project by classifying it as a stormwater mitigation plan, which means they may have committed grant fraud too.
Yeah.
County got federal funds for that one. I let that settle. Any word on the clerk? Suspended.
Yeah, they, like, they
Internal
actually put in effort
investigation
too.
pending. Apparently, he and Tricia went to the same country club. It's looking like she traded favors for
No,
after-hours
probably
access.
home. Well, I guess
The
gotta
next
get
few
cold
days
soon,
were a
too,
blur.
still, after
I kept
dark.
building footers
I
poured,
don't even know if
utility
this
trench
spark
dug,
closes,
but the
but-
air around town was charged. News vans parked
Oh,
outside
that's
the
so
county
fun.
office. HOA members from other neighborhoods
friends
started
if they're
demanding
bad.
audits of their own boards. Tricia's
Randomly
house
got
went dark.
distracted.
No lights, no movement.
Happy Easter.
Rumor was she'd hired a criminal defense attorney out of
Let's make
Charlotte.
friends, you know, like, 'cause they know I'm shy.
One
I always say I'm
afternoon,
shy.
I got a visit from a man named Henry Pollard, a retired federal
I don't know,
auditor who
I'm
lived
fine with
3
people
lots
approaching
down
me,
from
but, like,
Maple
I'm
Hollow.
terrified of approaching
He brought his
people.
own thermos
I
of
don't know why that's,
coffee
like,
and a
so in my
box
head,
of
I'm just
old
like, that's
HOA
just
newsletters.
The scariest thing in the world.
I always knew something didn't add up, he said, as we sat under the lean-to I'd thrown up next to the tool shed.
Yeah, right. You would think so.
They claimed
but for some reason
stormwater
it's
inspections
still
in
like that.
2019,
They're saying,
but I
Happy
never saw a
Easter back.
single contractor truck, and those reserve
Oh yeah,
funds
they can like look up.
supposedly reallocated for emergency
Yeah, they're very
infrastructure.
nice.
Guess what? There
Normally
was
there's
no
still
emergency.
Twitch. There's also
He handed me a
weirdos that
newsletter
just get
dated
booted
just
real
after the
fast.
so-called
Get kicked
expansion
out.
vote.
I do.
It had a
but I
line
started
buried on
recently,
page 4.
Just like vlogs,
Special
travel
thanks to
vlogs,
Curtis
and stuff
Hall
like
for his
that.
assistance in
That's really fun to
streamlining
do.
our records process. They weren't even trying to
Yeah,
hide
that was
it,
so
I
bad
muttered.
at doing TikTok
They thought
and
no one would
forget.
look, Henry said.
Yeah, always like,
Until
oh, I
you
should-
showed up.
I should make TikToks
That
while I'm
night,
here, and then
I
go home
finally
and I'm
checked
like,
the online
oh my
HOA
God.
forum
I
Henry had
forgot.
mentioned. It had exploded. Homeowners were posting receipts, bank statements,
they're really
even
sweet.
drone footage showing empty
Yeah, you
work
should
sites
try
the
it.
HOA
It's
had
fun.
paid for.
Yeah.
Henry had dropped a trove of files, including one that caught my eye.
No, you just
A spreadsheet
start.
labeled
Yeah.
vendor payout schedule internal
I
use
also started
only.
when I was in Korea.
It
like,
listed
a
over
year
a
and
dozen
half ago.
payments to companies with names like Eastern Green
Yeah, look at
Works
the
and
pretty.
Pine Property Services. None had working websites.
Yeah, do you have it?
Most were registered
Actually,
to
I can't
P.O.
follow you back
boxes in
because
3
this is my
nearby
old phone right
counties.
now, but
I sent the file
I'll
to
follow you,
Mark.
like, when
He
I
called
end it.
within
I
the
can look at
hour.
it.
They're all paper companies. I ran a trace. One of them, Green Works, is registered to Trisha's cousin. Another to a guy who worked her campaign when she ran for town council 15 years ago. You think they'll get her on wire fraud? They're trying. But they've definitely got enough for racketeering.
Nice.
Counties already coordinating with the state financial crimes unit. By the following week, subpoenas were flying. 3 former board members flipped, offering testimony in exchange for immunity.
My other one every time I go streaming. I'm like,
One of them, a woman named Janine, admitted under oath that Trisha had been
Thank
laundering
you.
money through dummy contracts since
I really
2017. She'd even kept handwritten ledgers. Then came the bombshell.
Yeah.
Detective Cormer called and asked me to meet him at the courthouse.
You guys should go follow her. She's
When
really
I got
sweet.
there, he handed me a sealed envelope. We raided a storage unit registered to Trisha's husband, he said. Inside, we found a safe. These were among the contents. I opened the envelope. Inside were copies of 2 maps, one showing the original boundaries of Maple Hollow, the other showing a drastically expanded version. But the second map had a note scrawled in pen across the top. Phase 2 expansion target parcels. Mine was circled in red.
Yeah.
They planned to annex the entire ridge, Cormer said. You weren't just a nuisance.
Yeah,
You were the test case. If they could force you in, they'd move on to the others. Any of those others? No. Not yet. We'll be contacting them, but your case exposed the plan.
Go away.
Without that, they might have pulled it off. I stared at the map, then folded it and handed it back.
Yeah,
You keeping that for evidence? He shook his head. We've got certified copies. That one's yours.
I have
When I left the courthouse, I drove straight to the overlook above the ridge.
One for my
The
phone, and
wind
I have
stirred the
another one
pine
for, like,
needles
this
around
thing.
my boots as I
this one
stood at the
drains
edge,
so
map in
fast.
hand. Below, the
but
scattered
actually,
parcels
I've
of
sort of
land, some
figured out if you can,
forested,
like,
some cleared,
live
lay
stream
quiet
off
and
the
untouched.
camera.
Free. I pinned the map to the inside wall of my
tool
tool shed
There
that
must
night,
be a
right
way.
next to the fake charter.
Mark
Mark called the next morning with the final
that's
update.
true.
Grand
Oh, they're
jury
writing, like,
handed down 8 indictments, he said.
Yes, go
Trisha's
follow
facing
them.
over 20 counts.
Oh, my
Mail
brains are
fraud,
done. Thank
wire
you. I
fraud,
just got a haircut
conspiracy,
today,
money
too.
laundering,
Yeah, it looks good. I was
obstruction.
looking at the layers. I
Curtis
was like,
Hall's taking
oh,
a
it's
plea.
so pretty.
So good. Wait, I think
He's
I-
going to testify against her in exchange for reduced charges. What about the other board members? 3 got probation and fines. Janine's likely walking
I used
free
to get my
because of her
hair cut here, but I was
cooperation.
just doing myself
The
for
rest, well, they're lawyers shopping. I nodded slowly. And the HOA dissolved by court order. You officially own
'cause I've
unrestricted
had,
land.
I've had, like,
No
good hairdressers
covenants,
here,
no
but I've also
fees,
had, like,
no
nightmare
board.
ones where I'm just like,
I let out a breath I hadn't realized I was holding. Appreciate everything, Mark. You did the heavy lifting, he said.
I like had a hairdresser.
You
and it
just
was the
needed
same one that
someone
I
to
had been
clear
cutting
the
my hair
legal
for, like, a
debris.
while, and she
I
just
spent
went
the
rogue
rest of
on
the
me.
day
She all of a sudden was
installing
just
the
like-
ridge facing
she cut- like,
windows
'cause I
on
have
the
a lot of
cabin
hair.
frame.
She was just like,
When the
you know what
sun
you
set
get? You should
behind
get
the
a lot of
trees,
layers.
the whole
And she
place
just, like,
glowed
cut off,
amber
like,
inside.
90% of my hair.
Jasper stretched out on the subfloor and let out a soft sigh,
Did it?
tail
She
thumping
didn't
once.
even ask me. She was just like,
I walked out to the
this
gate
suits you.
and
Let me
locked
go
it
do that.
behind
And
me,
I was
the
just
new
like,
sign swinging gently in the breeze. Private property. No trespassing, no HOA.
I think so.
And
because
this
she was like,
time
"It's
it
perfect
wasn't
for
just a
summer."
warning,
And I'm
it was a
like, yeah, but I
promise.
didn't ask for that though.
The first real rain of the season came hard and sudden,
I mean,
pelting
yeah,
the
like I
pine
was
roof
actually
of the cabin
just
with a
when
rhythm
you were
like
talking to
war
me,
drums.
I was like showing like
I
you
was
could see,
standing
like,
at the
my natural
workbench
hair.
inside,
And
fitting
then
the
here,
last
like, I think
window
I should really
frame
dye it
when a
again.
low rumble of tires broke through the storm. Jasper's ears twitched, but he stayed where he was, eyes fixed on the driveway. A white, unmarked SUV rolled to a stop outside the gate. The driver stepped out, umbrella already opened.
I was like this
He
color
wore a
more, so I
tailored
probably
black
should dye
suit
it
with a
again,
federal
but-
badge clipped to his belt. I opened the door and stepped onto the porch, still holding the
From
chisel.
the Netherlands.
You're not from the county, I said.
Oh,
No,
really?
sir, he replied. Special Agent Marcus Linford, Department of Justice.
She
May I
tall?
come in? I nodded once and held the door.
Me tall. Me too.
He shook off the rain and stepped inside, glancing around at the exposed beams and half-finished flooring.
I like it. I love
You've
the
been busy,
Netherlands. It's
he
really
said.
nice.
Enough to sleep here.
Like-
What's the DOJ want with a guy
Amsterdam,
building
most
his
people
own
just go to
cabin?
Amsterdam, which is
He
also
set a
nice, but it
manila
can be, like, a
folder
bit
on the edge of my
crowded.
bench.
Not gonna, like, a lot of, like, most
We've
stuff people
opened
I
a
know don't
broader
go to often
investigation
either.
into municipal
Like, there's
corruption
other
in the
cities that are
region.
really nice.
Your
me tall.
case was the match. I didn't say anything. He flipped the folder
But
open.
yeah. But it's fun. Like,
Inside
it's just,
were color
to, like, get those
photographs
photos,
of
kind
bank
feels like you're
statements,
hanging out.
county
Has there been
disbursement
live,
forms,
like, all day?
and something that
No,
made
no,
my
like,
jaw
sit
tighten a
here. Like,
scanned
I've just
letter
been alive
bearing
for,
the
like, 2
signature of
hours.
a
Maybe a
federal
little bit longer
grant
'cause I had to
administrator,
close
approving
after we
funds
started,
for
so
a
maybe, like,
non-existent
like 2 hours
environmental
now.
remediation project.
Yeah. Some people do it for like really
The
long. They
recipient
do it for, like,
listed
6,
Maple
7
Hollow
hours a day.
Community Development
I can't do
Trust.
that. I might get
That
lost.
trust doesn't exist, I said. Correct, Linford said.
Yeah.
But it
I heard
received
that, but I've never tried that
$78,000
before,
from a
to be
federal
honest, 'cause,
rural
like, most of my
infrastructure grant 2
community
years
is
ago.
just, like, dead. It's like that's why I'm talking about
Tricia
this
filed the
annoying thing. It's
paperwork
just, like,
using
the
a forged
constant
EIN and a
that,
ficticious
yeah.
board
Yeah,
of
most of my
trustees.
community, they're not really
The
on
money
TikTok,
was
so
routed
if I go
through a
live there, it's just,
third-party
like,
nonprofit, then
you would have to,
withdrawn
like,
in
start
cash
from
over 6
zero
months.
again and, like, build up.
He tapped one of the
Get,
documents.
like, different, like, demographics.
We believe your property was meant to anchor a
Sometimes, like, only
fabricated
tourists. For real,
conservation
like, most
easement,
people, I know
which
they
she
don't
would
go
use to
there.
apply for
Like, I
additional
only go to
funding.
Amsterdam if it's like friends.
Once
are
it was
visiting from
under
abroad and
HOA
they wanna
control,
go.
she could claim it was being preserved under community management.
It's a lot. Like even for me.
So
it
they
just
were
feels
going to
like
use my land to scam
almost
the
like a
federal
different country
government
inside the
again.
country. It's like
Not
intense.
just yours,
Did you ever go to
Linford
the
said.
United
7
I
other
really want
parcels
to,
were
actually.
targeted.
I really want to. I mean, maybe not.
You were the
currently,
only one who
but
wouldn't go along
I really
with it.
want to.
I leaned back against the
What
workbench.
state would you guys
What happens
go? Or
next?
if you guys
We're
were
working
to
with the
US,
U.S. Attorney's
There are
Office to
some
pursue
actually
charges
Americans, but
beyond
I
the
don't
ones
know.
already
I've been-
filed.
from Canada.
Wire fraud, conspiracy to
Kansas.
defraud the federal government, obstruction.
Yeah. I was about to say like.
We're
Wizard
also
of Oz,
issuing
Kansas.
subpoenas to several former county employees. He paused.
I
There's
mean,
one more
besides, I'm
thing.
thinking of like besides
He pulled
Wizard
out
of
a
Oz, like,
photo,
foreigner, I can't
grainy
think of
but
anything
clear
else
enough.
besides, like, maybe
It showed
tornadoes, or
Curtis
do you guys
Hall
not get
standing
those?
beside a black SUV in an alley behind the zoning office.
Oh, yeah.
A woman in a tan trench coat was handing him an envelope.
It's full of corn.
That's not Tricia,
Nice.
I said. No.
Nice.
Her name's Elinor Varnes. She was a consultant for a regional
really would
planning
love to do,
firm.
like, one of those, like,
She's
road
also under
trips. Like, I've heard
investigation in
Route
3 other
66 is
counties
really
for
popular, but I actually
unrelated
would
graft
really love to
schemes.
visit, like, other places. Like, I
We
wanna go to
believe she coached
Montana.
Tricia on how to exploit
like
small town zoning
Yellowstone.
loopholes and grant programs. Any idea how
Like, the
far it goes?
national
We're still
parks.
digging.
Yeah, 'cause I like
But your
that.
case cracked it
It's
open.
like I want to so
He left the
bad.
folder and his card,
so
then
nice.
disappeared into the rain as quickly as he'd arrived.
Maybe if you could, like,
Later that day, I drove into town for supplies.
Yeah, that's what I really want.
At the hardware
No,
store,
I'm not-
people
I'm not,
nodded
like,
to
the
me
type
in
of
that
person to do
quiet,
stuff like that
acknowledging
alone.
way people do when someone's name has been in the paper more than once.
Where's that?
Not celebrity, not sympathy, just respect.
I think the Midwest.
As I loaded lumber
Okay.
into the bed of my truck,
Alright.
a man in a brown flannel jacket
when I think of
approached.
Wisconsin,
He
I
looked
think
about
of,
60, wiry, with sharp eyes and a sun-leathered face.
I think.
You're the guy who stood up to Maple Hollow, he said. I nodded.
Oh my gosh, I used
I've
to
got
love that
40
show.
acres on the West Ridge, he said.
Oh, the right music.
They tried the same
They're-
thing
they're
with me
compliment.
5 years ago.
Sometimes
Sent
it's
letters,
nice to me.
threatened liens.
Not always. Though.
I didn't
No,
have the
no, no.
money to
Sometimes it can
fight,
be
so I
mean.
just ignored
It's
them.
above Chicago.
Figured they'd give
Oh,
up.
okay.
They didn't. They gave up on me, but
Yeah,
not
so
the
Midwest-
land.
Well, Chicago's really-
Last year, I found survey markers way off the old boundary.
Chicago, it's really nice.
They were planning something,
Rotterdam?
I just didn't know what. You do now, I said, and handed him one of the
Oh, I see
extra
what you're saying. Yeah,
copies
you're
of the
the worst of
DOJ
all,
letter
Leo.
Linford had left me. He read it, jaw
Nah, they're
tightening.
nice for the most
Let me
part.
know if you ever need a hand up
I might
there.
have to try to.
Back at the cabin, I finished
It's
installing the
fun.
final window.
Like
The
it's
90s show.
By
I
morning,
actually
the
watched
rain had
that.
cleared,
Wait,
and the
really?
whole
There's
ridge
a new
smelled
one?
like
It
pine
sucks,
needles
but,
and
like,
wet
it's
loam.
Like, it's corny, but it's like
I stood
corny
on the
where it gets
porch
you,
with
like,
a mug of
watching it
coffee
still.
and
Yeah.
watched
it, like,
the
about
mist
the same
roll down the
people, only older, or
treetops
is it
like
about,
slow
like,
smoke.
kids?
That
Yeah.
week,
Ah,
the
yeah,
county
that makes
council
sense.
held a special public
No,
hearing.
I love that 70s show. That was always really
Mark
fun.
and I sat
know
near
the
the
new
back,
season of Exit
watching
Games
as the
is
remaining
coming out.
fragments of Maple
Bro, I saw
Hollow's
clips
leadership
of it,
were
and I
called
was
to
just like,
account.
I've watched that season.
The
I've
room
watched,
was
like, 1 and
packed
2,
residents, reporters,
and it was always like
even a few state
horrendously painful
officials.
to watch.
Yeah.
But
When
it's
Mark
like
was
kind of
called
like
up
one of
to
those like
present the
shows
findings
where
of our
it's so
case,
cringe, but you
he didn't
can't stop
grandstand.
watching.
Yeah.
Like it's almost like
He laid out the
self-inflicted
facts with
torture
surgical
at some-
precision dates,
But, like, I
documents,
love, like,
signatures,
to all the
and the
boys I love
systematic
movies, like-
misuse of
Oh,
authority.
guys are cute. Yeah,
He finished by
yeah.
holding up the original expansion map with the red circled parcels.
Oh, my sister, this is my sister.
This was not about
actually.
community,
My younger sister.
he said. It was
You're
about
watching it right
control,
now?
deception,
It's so
and greed.
Spoiler.
And the only reason it didn't
Oh my
succeed
God. I
is
don't know if
because
I
one
want
man
to,
refused
but
to
it
be
looked
bullied.
like it just
The
looked
room went
painful.
quiet.
Wait, is this
Later, as we stepped outside, a woman from the council caught up to us.
Oh, really?
She introduced herself as Lydia Hartsfield.
Pictures or not really?
No.
She ran a
when I'm
community
streaming, it's kinda
nonprofit
hard,
that
but I
focused
was
on
kinda
land
getting, like,
preservation and
I got
rural
FOMO
development.
Real bad.
I know.
We want to use
From, like,
this case to
everybody and
push
their,
for
like,
reform,
friends, like,
she said.
boyfriends.
Not just here. We've heard from
Yeah.
5 other towns in the last 2 weeks that are facing similar HOA overreach.
know.
Mark arched an
So I was like,
eyebrow. You want Shane to be
Yeah,
your
but, like,
poster
I guess I
child,
didn't
she
even bring, like,
laughed.
my good
Not
camera to take
exactly,
pictures
but
with
we'd
them.
like his help drafting a homeowner
like, a
rights
Sony
ordinance for the
ZV-1.
county,
But,
something
like, I
with
used a
teeth,
flash
real
attachment,
protections.
So it makes, like, really
I looked
good
at Mark.
pictures.
He gave a small nod. Why not? I said. Let's make sure this doesn't happen again. Over the next month, I split my
I need to
time
help you
between
guys start
finishing the
taking
cabin
pictures.
and
It's so
working with
dark.
Lydia's group.
Like,
We
unless I have, like, a
drafted the
good
Ridgeview
flash, I don't
Homeowner
think it's
Rights
gonna
Act,
turn out very
a
well.
county ordinance that barred retroactive HOA jurisdiction, required full
What do you study,
transparency in
actually,
zoning-related filings, and established a
Do you like
penalty
it?
structure for board members found misusing
Yeah,
funds.
I think
It
I have
passed
a lot
unanimously.
Of friends that did, like,
The
international
news
business
caught on
here.
statewide.
Who study abroad.
By
Yeah,
summer,
make that
legislators
definitely
were
makes
talking
kinda
about a
sense.
broader
Oh,
bill
God.
modeled on our
That's
ordinance.
so cute.
Calls came in from other
No,
counties,
there was one, like,
asking for copies of the language, asking how we did it.
lot of
We
the
told them the
red
truth. It started with one letter taped to a mailbox
Solana was flooded
and
with
ended
I would
with a
say there's a
law.
lot of tourists.
By the time the last nail went into the cabin
I got
roof,
here during COVID,
the ridge had changed.
So I was like,
Not just legally,
I remember,
but in the way people
Sounds like a
treated
weird
one
person.
another.
Like, I remember the days
My
when I was,
nearest
like, no
neighbor, a
tourists.
retired
It
army
was
medic
insane.
named
Like, everything's
Rosa,
mingled.
dropped off
Like,
seedlings from my
you
garden.
know how bad it is, right? Like, it's
The man
insane.
with
I
the
was- when I
flannel
got
from the
there, I used to
hardware
live really
store helped me
close,
level the
and there was
solar panel
literally, like,
mounts.
there was no one.
Someone left a
It was
tin
like
of
a
cinnamon
band.
bread on my
What
porch
the
with a
heck?
note
I
that just
can't
said,
imagine.
No, it's like
Thank you.
insane.
I never
because
found
used to,
out
like,
who.
cross
One
from
afternoon,
side of Yonam to
I
the
sat
other
on
in,
the
like,
porch with
in, like, a
Jasper,
few minutes because it was
watching
just,
the
like,
ridge
speed
glow
walk through it.
gold in
Now
the
I
late
can't 'cause
light.
it's so crowded.
Mark pulled up in his truck, stepped out, and handed me a leather-bound folder. What's this? I asked.
where the cathedral's
Final court
at?
documents,
Yeah.
he
There's, like,
said.
in front of
All
the
liens
business
voided,
park,
all
and
claims
there's, like,
dissolved,
government
title
areas
cleared.
there where, like, you can do your skin
You're now the
analysis,
sole,
Okay.
uncontested owner of
there's
your
a
property.
rooftop
He paused, then added,
Okay.
and the Department of Justice just indicted Alina Varnes. Full-scale fraud operation going back more than a decade. You
Why is
helped
it that
blow the lid off
color?
it.
Wait.
What happens to the others?
It's like
They'll
that's
get
like
their
it's
land
like
back.
dark, like brownish.
Just like you did.
green.
He stayed for dinner, and we talked
actually
about
doesn't
old
look that
cases,
bad,
dumb
though.
mistakes, and the time he almost got held in
Like,
contempt
that was
for calling a
good.
judge's
Like,
ruling
this
a
part-
flaming
this
pile
part
of
was good. The rest
legislative
of it just
garbage.
no.
When he left, I stood at the edge of the porch,
Oh, everybody
watching
go
the
for it.
taillights
Just
disappear
right now,
through the
it's focusing.
trees.
I think it is.
That night,
You see
I
it
finally
or not?
framed the map,
No.
not the fake one. The
It's
real
like-
one, the one
it's-
showing the
it feels
ridge,
like
the
so
parcels,
small,
the
so
old
shallow.
boundaries that mattered.
Oh yeah, no.
I hung it in the front room next to the fireplace,
sometimes I do
not
like
as
that,
a
but,
warning,
like,
as a
sometimes it's just
reminder
easier
that
to read
some
it like
lines
this.
shouldn't be crossed.
Yeah.
And if they are, someone
should
has
go
to
follow her.
stand and
She's very
say,
nice.
not here.
I've had
that
2
someone
people
was
come up
me,
to talk to
and I'd do
I've
it
literally
again.
feel like, nobody